28-year-old motorbike with 20-year-old fuel sat in it. So I've acquired a new motorbike, which I'm calling Project Pegaso. Why? Often a good question. I saw it come up on eBay. I might have had a few beers. Thought it was so ugly it was cool. And you can't buy a class like that anymore. You know, proper gauges, 90s graphics, etc. So I've been thinking about getting a sit-up straight style adventure bike for a while. But spending the kind of money on a new one doesn't fit with my lifestyle choices, shall we say. You know, is someone on a 25 grand GS going to be having £23,500 more fun than me going down the same road? I don't know. I also don't want to miss out on the sportier road bike experience on a nice dry day. I have a VFR 800 that was my first big boys bike after only passing my test a few years ago as a born-again biker after a 20-year gap. It's a nice bike by my Cat N, very low standards. But as I've become a more confident rider, I've found myself wanting to enjoy giving it the beans a bit more, which on that bike means I'm straight into problematic speeds, shall we say. I've also started to find the VTEC system a bit annoying. It can be fun in a straight line, but when you're pressing on a bit round a corner, it pops in and out of VTEC. You know, if you're in the wrong rev range at the wrong time, I just find that unsettling. I'd rather it wasn't a thing. So that leads me to thinking, what would be my ideal sort of skinflint motorbike setup? After much deliberation and fantasy bike shopping, I think that's two bikes. Two bikes is the way to go. I think one adventure stroke dirt type bike and one road stroke perhaps potential track day bike. You know, I might have a go at track days. I might just be too lazy, but so it needs to work on the road as well, because you know, I think track days are a nice idea, but whether or not I'd regularly get myself out there and actually do it would be another thing entirely in the cold light of day. So a VFR 800 has 505 brake horsepower per tonne. I don't need that much power to enjoy myself. For me, the fun in riding a motorbike is giving it the beans a bit, sticking your head on the tank and hanging onto it while it wails. Don't get me wrong, I like power, but it's a situation that's only going to get me in trouble, I think. Getting it going in first or second and then just having it kick it up to sixth and sit there is no fun for me. You know, you're carrying around all that weight and grunt that you just can't use on the public road sensibly. So an Aprilia Pegaso has 286 brake horsepower per tonne. Flat out, it'll do 111 miles an hour, so it should sit at 70 without revving itself silly. I don't want a dirt bike that's awful at 70, because I'll probably end up, doing a dual carriageway motorway run on it at some point. But I'll be able to have a mooch down some gravel roads in the rain, some muddy bits, nothing wild. I've never ridden a bike off-road. I saved up to buy one in my youth, but was disallowed, but I'll save that for my therapist. Pegaso was dirt cheap to buy, 1,200 quid, though I'm not entirely sure how good a deal that was, but I mean, it's done now, so I think it was reasonable, but we'll see. And there's plenty of bits for them on eBay. I should be able to keep it going for donkey's years, hopefully get it to run reliably and have many adventures on it. Which leaves my road stroke potential track day choice as a Suzuki SV650. They're now dirt cheap to buy, loads of parts around. Obviously, you've got racing pedigree with them being used as mini twins, super twins. 359 brake horsepower per tonne, so still quick by average car sort of road standards, but a fair bit less than the VFR. No VTEC system, much less weight, and should handle nice. I've seen one advertised today that was free. Facebook Marketplace. I'm resisting hiring a van. to go and get it, as I haven't got space for 3 bikes, and there might be some domestic resistance to that plan. I'll pick one up for buttons once I've offloaded the VFR. I'm sure there's loads of them around. I should probably concentrate on getting this Pegaso running and MOT'd first. So I bought the Pegaso as a project bike on eBay. The company involved said they'd heard it run on starter fluid and it sounded fine. Hasn't had an MOT since 2005. I got it delivered by courier, which cost a few quid, but what can you do? Due to work commitments, the boss had to deal with it being delivered, which he was very pleased about. I initially wimped out of the filming process, but I've since changed my mind, so I'll have to tell you what I've done so far. I took the tank off and all the rest of its clothes. It looked in reasonable condition, some light surface rust, nothing catastrophic. The fuel tap was seized solid, but in the off position, which is probably a good thing. I took the tank off. The fuel cap lock was stuck solid, but some oil and wiggling as hard as I dare without snapping the key. I got it freed off. I drained about 12 litres of 20-year-old fuel out of it, which had this red varnishy gloop in it and absolutely stunk. I spilled it everywhere, all over my clothes, obviously. I was smelling it for days. So then I got the fuel tap out, managed to free it up, blast it out with an airline, and I got this horrible sort of red varnishy tar gloop stuff, which shot out when I blasted it with the airline, which made me really fear for the carburetors, what might lie in store there. So I got the fuel tap all cleaned out and moving. I bought some new fuel type and an inline filter, which I thought might be useful for early attempts at startup, just to catch junk. I later ditched it as I was worried about the down and then up fuel flow the extra pipe was introducing, so I didn't know if that was also a contributing issue when I was trying to get the thing going. At this point, I thought about just buying a new fuel tap, and then you start to think, new this, new that, 50 quid here, 80 quid there, and I was thinking about changing the seat for a black one on eBay, a clear screen maybe, 115 quid for the seat, 45 quid for the screen, new carbs, and I thought, no, this is a project bike. You can get new everything, and it's never going to be a showpiece. It's a cheap bike I'm going to mooch about on in the rain, so let's just get it running and keep our hands in our pockets as much as possible and not go nuts. It all adds up, doesn't it? I found a new filter on eBay for the reserve part of the fuel tap that had disintegrated, or I destroyed it, one of the two, when I was trying to get the gloop out. So next I tackled the carbs. I watched 2 rebuild videos, one in Italian and one in French, the only ones I could find, obviously. I'd be lying to you if I said I knew exactly how carburetors work. I don't have much experience with them other than my lawnmower. I'm not bilingual either. But I can unblock holes and clean out gunk. So I always try and boil things down to their fundamentals, rightly or wrongly. Again, apologies for not filming it, but I basically just opened them up, blasted them with carb cleaner, checked the rubbers were okay. The fuel must have been turned off early doors as the carbs were dry, minus some small bits of gunk. The throttle and slides were stuck, but I got them freed up without destroying anything, I think. While the tank was off, I went round the chassis rust spots with a green scouring pad to get rid of the loose, and then slathered it all in Lanogard grease, which stinks, but it'll hopefully safeguard my spectacular investment. I bought a battery. I bought a good Yuasa one, as I'm planning on keeping the bike for a long time. And I've had some miserable experiences with cheap batteries, if the thing sits for a few weeks. There wasn't one on the bike when it arrived. What to do about the red gloop in the tank was my next question. I came across a post on the Seafoam website that says it can liquefy the varnish. So I followed the directions, dumped a can of high mileage Seafoam in it, and a gallon of gas, as they would say. I checked there was some oil in it, but I didn't top it up, as it's a dry sump system, something I thought only happened with racing cars, and I've got no experience with. It's a Rotax engine, which is in loads of bikes. Google tells me they also make engines for planes and all kinds of craft. Maybe that's why. The manual tells me you have to run it for a minute to get the oil pump going, and then you get a proper level. So I was happy that there was some oil in it. I tried to start it, but I could only get it to stumble and die on the choke. I got it going with some brake clean a bit. I may have overdone that and made a bit of a fire in the airbox, but thankfully I was able to blow it out with 2 puffs, no lasting damage. I decided to give up blasting it around after that, gave myself a bit of a fright when it burst into flames. So I checked the spark, that was okay. So fuel delivery problem. I took the carbs off again on closer inspection with a light. What I now know are the pilot jets were clogged with the gunge. I'd missed that the first time around. So with a needle and blasting around carb cleaner, I checked all the passageways I could that were, I was able to blast through with the can and check it was coming out the other end. So I put the carbs back on, and this time it fired and ran. Although not well, it was revving and stumbling and, generally not happy. But I got it up and running long enough to get it up to temperature. It didn't overheat. The fan kicked in. I managed to do 3 laps around the garden. It was a bit clanky going into gear, but also it hasn't been ridden for 20 years, so hopefully it'll be okay after an oil change and a bit of use. Then I parked it up. So as per the Seafoam instructions, I now need to let it sit for a few days. Hopefully the Seafoam has now made its way into the carbs and should liquefy the varnish, and it will magically run great from now on, maybe. I've seen people with, ultrasonic cleaners, and that's an expense I'd rather avoid, obviously. But I don't think they're the solve all problems thing that they might have been made out to be. I also don't want to have to buy one. So if I can get it going, again, it's a dirt cheap old bike. If I can get it going just with, repeated cleaning and eventually clean the carbs out enough to get it running all right, then I'm going to persevere with that, I think. In the meantime, now that I know I've got a runner, or at least a stumbler, I ordered the parts to service the engine. The tyres are from 2001. Whilst they look absolutely fine, and I don't think it's an MOT fail, the actual date on them, I don't want to risk it. So I found a recent used front on eBay, and I couldn't find a rear the right size used, so I got a new cheapie for the back. The 28-year-old brake pipes are soft. I couldn't see any cracking on them, but I just don't want to risk it. So I splashed 100-ish quid on some Goodridge ones. Again, I'm planning on keeping this bike till the bitter end, so I think it's some sensible spending just to make sure it's going to stop when I yank the lever. I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to look nice, but it needs to be safe and hopefully reliable. I've got some new pads on the way for my Brembo calipers. I've never had Brembo calipers before, so there's posh. Over and out.